Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this panel about creating a culture of innovation, strategic HR initiatives and everyday practice. My name's Rod Hutchings and I'm today in Bangkok, Thailand. So it's evening here and I'll be your moderator. So we have with us two great panelists who will be joining us, and let's bring them forward, please. Hello once again. Hello.
Hello.
So how about we'll start our little discussion. If you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us about what excites you about this topic.
Tresina, please go ahead.
All right. So just to introduce myself, my name is Tresina Lockhart. I'm a VP of Programs at TechBridge. I have over 2 decades of leadership experience in talent management and program management across multiple industries, working for best-in-class organizations such as Capgemini and NTT Data and Korn Ferry. And over my career, I've helped to implement all types of HR programs, focused mostly in the talent acquisition area. And what interests me today is basically my job is all about strategy and making sure that the team knows how to execute, and making sure that we stay on track with that. And it takes everyday tactical practices in order to do so.
That's a great introduction. Thank you. Welcome. And Anna.
Tresina, that's wonderful. I believe that I share a lot of your concerns for everyday life. My current role is a VP of Organizational Transformation for Artificial Intelligence in Action, which is an organization that tries really to implement new ways for HR and in all things in life, how we can really implement AI. At the same time, I work as an organizational design and transformation consultant. My work is very much trying to find the right strategies for the organization so that they make the most for their efficiency and productivity. For that reason, all my life, the last some 18 plus years or perhaps more, I was in head roles in headquarters of global organizations doing either organizational design or organizational development or heading the HR function. And I would like to have the opportunity here to discuss a little bit more how we can create that kind of culture that can really produce innovation, but in a strategic way.
Wow, thank you. It should be a good conversation. So I just wonder then, just to start it, I've heard strategic spoken about. I'm just wondering, how do you balance the need of strategic long-term innovation goals with immediate needs of daily HR operations? What are some of your thoughts around that?
I think it's really about planning and being very mindful of staying on target and on track with the plans that you've set. I think a lot of times you do get caught up in the day-to-day activity and things kind of get lost in the shuffle. The strategy starts to fade away and you're like, okay, hold on, how do we get back to it? I think by holding folks accountable, engaging with the stakeholders consistently, making sure that you're using tools that help you track your activity. I think those are key ways that I've in the past made sure that I stayed on task with the strategy and not become overwhelmed with the day-to-day activity.
Thanks. Anna?
I do believe that a lot of times, strategic comes into mind when things become tougher. And a lot of times organizations, get carried away by the day-to-day business. And they only come into their sense and think things more strategically when things become a little bit tougher. And what I usually say is that as in life, you don't have really to do things after something happens. You need to proactively really work everything in your life. Same thing goes with strategy, because strategy really creates the resilience, instills the resilience within the organization. And this is why we need to not just to bring that into their mind, but start every day with that. That's why there are ways so that we bring that into the everyday check-in that each manager has with their own teams. So I always suggest ways that brings that upfront in the everyday action.
Okay, thanks, Anna. Now, I'm just wondering, do you want to add any more to that?
I think I was talking. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. So no, Anna, that's spot on. I totally agree with that. It is about having a cadence and conversations with your team, and asking them what are their pain points and how can you automate things when in order to alleviate some of the difficulties and challenges. I was reading the other day from another one of the panels that we had done, some feedback from folks who were talking about technology and how we in HR have become overwhelmed with technology, and that we think that it can replace, what humans can do and provide. And we definitely have to look at how we can streamline that, but one way we can streamline it is by being more specific about how we use our technology for strategy and partner those two concepts. And I think that's forgotten a lot of times, is that we're thinking the bigger picture. We're not thinking all the time about, how do we actually make sure that day-to-day tasks don't interfere with the long-term strategy? How do we use automation in order to help us with that? And then how do we actually understand what the challenges are of the teams that we're working with?
Okay, so you're discussing challenges. So can be many challenges when we're trying to foster a culture of innovation. What are some ways to overcome the challenges? What other ways? You want to just dive into that a bit more? Yeah, Anna?
A lot of times, this resistance to change comes because of the fact that people really do not understand what's going to be the benefit for themselves. So methodically, as well as practically, overcoming resistance to change is, first of all, analyzing your stakeholders. I always suggest a very, very frequent mapping of the stakeholders' needs and actions, so that you're very much updated on how you can address their needs. And in that way, you not only are prepared in the position to find the what you need for me and give it to them, but also you're very well prepared to create the right channels of communications and also the right messages that need to go through. With that being said, I do believe that in order to be very well prepared to introduce anything, you really need also to be very well aware of what is the impact in the different parts of the organization. So how each of your stakeholders is going to be impacted in a multi-level way, in their work content, in how they're going to interact with the other teams, even in their performance management, how they're going to be judged for their success at work, how the process of their work is going to be affected, how the tools are going to be affected for them. So many different aspects of how they're going to be affected. You need to know that. You really need to have assessed the situation so that you know how you can address your stakeholders. This is the only methodical way to overcome resistance.
Some really good points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great points, definitely. I was thinking when you talked about communication, I was thinking about having a change management plan, because one of the things that happens a lot of times when there's a change in strategy is that folks feel very uncomfortable with how that all is being executed. And if you don't have a change management plan that includes, of course, the communication piece, assessment of stakeholders, actual timelines that will help folks to understand that they don't need to panic about the changes that are coming, because people do feel uncomfortable a lot of times with change. And how we help them to process that is by actually, like you said, Anna, having a strong communication plan, understanding all of the elements that are involved, actually not building a strategic plan that's not realistic. I feel like that happens a lot of times too, is that we have these grandiose thoughts about what we can accomplish, and we don't always have the resources or staff to actually support it. And that's what impacts the tactical day to day. I'm just thinking about some projects that I had worked on in the past, and we had plotted out these amazing, at the executive level, what we're going to do. This is going to be awesome. And then we've forgotten that people have work to do every day, right? And how do we help them to actually not feel overwhelmed and burnt out? That's key. And being able to assess that, you need some manner of assessment. Anna, what have you used in the past to assess whether or not folks are feeling burnout?
Thank you very much, Rosina, for the question. It's very much important to take the pulse of the people on the level of change fatigue, which happens a lot of the time. It's always good in order to introduce that kind of feedback exercise to have systems thinking. System thinking is really helping an organization to have the big picture. So because when you only see the change and you don't see how that change fits into the whole thing, then you miss the way really to utilize any kind of feedback that you might be given. So I always say that put system thinking first. And second, things do in an agile way, which means, do it in sprints, iterate, and then continue. Because in that way, people get less overwhelmed. And in order to do that, of course, you have a change strategy in place. You have done your impact assessment, your stakeholder analysis. You've created a cadence of a communication plan, a very good architecture for your communication, which is very much important. But within that communication architecture, you intertwine, you have integrated into that the very, very frequent feedback process, which might be getting a survey back. How do you feel about this and this and this and this? Which can be easy for the person to get back to you. But it might also be within the morning meeting that the manager has with their team. Ask them about things. Get the emotions, which sometimes they don't come through another survey. Have a focus group on specific areas that come up, understand what is the rationale behind it. So dig into that information. But I say that these things should not happen randomly and without being an integrated part of the whole communication architecture. That's something that should be very much prepared from the start. So, yeah.
I'm just wondering, so I think what we've been talking about is how we foster a safe environment where employees feel they can take on change. I'm wondering if we could just also talk about how do we make the employees come up with ideas and feel comfortable experiment with new ideas themselves? How do we get the employees to bring in new innovation rather than it getting done to them from that perspective? What are your thoughts about that?
I think that it's really about making folks comfortable with sharing their ideas without feeling as though they're going to be challenged or they're not going to be heard. I think a huge piece of any strategy and change management or implementing something new is making sure people don't feel silly when they ask a question, or that they don't feel as though you're, why would you ask us that? They are learning. Always being vulnerable as a leader, I think, helps people too. If you can say, I really don't know. Let's all discover this together. Share your thoughts here. I think rewards too, when folks are providing information, recognition is important. I don't know how many times I've been in organizations where somebody did a fantastic job. Everybody knew it on the back end, but it was kind of like a secret, instead of the leadership kind of celebrating that person and saying, hey, thank you so much, Rod, for the amazing job that you did on XYZ. I think that's important, because then people feel like, hey, I want to share my ideas. because I know that they're well received and that I'll actually be recognized for them.
I would like to speak very much to that. Thank you, Tresina, for bringing that up. I mean, creating an environment of psychological safety is of absolute importance, and it's very much on the manager, but at the same time on the design of the organization, how you really have structured the organization to operate. Because a manager can do things up to a point, cannot really change how the processes or the policies or the structure of an organization. He or she needs to operate within this framework. So the second element, I believe, is the framework, how the organization is operating. And over there, you might have, let's say, bothersome processes. And an employee has to jump a lot of loops in order to do something, ask for numerous approvals in order for something to be done, being so disempowered to do his or her job, that although the manager provides the psychological safety, the employee himself or herself does not feel empowered to do the job that they have been assigned to. And they cannot really provide any kind of innovative ideas. So it's very much also how we structure the organization. I mean, how complicated the processes are, how many layers we have. I mean, what are really the authorizations that someone needs in order to make things done? How strict and not strict, how rigid are really things. I have the example of agility, for example, that in an organization that you allocate the budget at the beginning of the year, to what extent you really give the opportunity to and the empowerment to the employees to have the flexibility on that would be absolutely justified within a specific level of freedom to do things over there. And with that being said, I do believe that providing the conditions, but also the maturity of the managers and the psychological safety, all these things is going to help into having an innovative work environment, which adds a lot to an organization's resilience, sustainability, and thrive.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, and especially when you're talking about having agility and making sure that people can actually flex up and flex down, and also understanding that, you know, when you do have so many approvals in a process, it does start to paralyze people because they feel afraid to actually step outside or, you know, do something that they shouldn't do. Psychological safety, when you talk about that, that's also key. I mean, if you're coming to work every day, if on Sunday night you feel like, it's going to be, tomorrow, then people are not going to work effectively. Not micromanaging folks, actually empowering them. I think you used the word empowerment. I love that. Making sure that people feel like I can safely execute my job without risk of being, embarrassed or terminated. I think there has been on the broader sense of things in the US right now, there's this cancel culture period. If you do the wrong thing, you make a misstep, you could have made it 30 years ago when things were different, and people hold you accountable for it, right? And so now that's kind of steeped into the workspace where people feel like, I don't want to say the wrong thing, or I don't want to do the wrong thing because I want to be able to be promoted. And if I do the wrong thing or I say the wrong thing, I'll be put inside this box. And I think a lot of that comes from the 9-box process in itself. I don't know how familiar you guys are with 9-box, but when you're talking about hypos and all those things, everybody has a snapshot of when they're actually a hypo, right? A high potential person. And maybe they're a hypo for something else that they're not assigned to right now. And we're a little bit off topic, but I think it's important to understand how people get through their tactical day. If they feel like, if we just look at a at a capsule or short period of time of somebody's performance and they're not doing well right then. And we don't help to make adjustments as leaders to say, okay, maybe today Anna's just not, this is not, maybe I gave her this assignment and this is not her strength, and move it to somebody else and then play to Anna's strength, instead of saying, you know what, she didn't do well in this one thing and we're just gonna, toss her aside. She's been phenomenal in every other way, but this just one time she didn't actually meet our expectations. And instead of coaching that person up or helping them to transition to something else that actually fits their skill set, we have a tendency sometimes to want to part ways with the person. And so I think as HR leaders, we have to coach leadership teams to understand that that's not the way to actually manage, right? Everybody has a bad day or a bad project. How do you help them learn from that and grow from it? Yes, there is a need for business organizations to be able to move forward and do, progressive things, but you also are nurturing the people that you have, which will help everyone elevate and also drive towards the strategy.
Thanks.
May
Yeah,
I
go on,
add?
Matt.
Because, thank you very much. That's a very interesting thing that Trezina brought up, and thank you very much for that. The term of the high potentials. I mean, a lot of years we were very much dealing with that 9-box thing, and we were placing people, these are my high potentials, and I'm going to invest in these guys. And sometimes, I mean, because of these high potential people that we were very much pile of power to them, maybe we were not giving the right attention to the whole team, and maybe these people became too much of heroes and sometimes a little bit of jerks, and this kind of unbalance created really has created some kind of maturity to human resources, to HR, understanding that it's really not that much the individuals that make things happen, because these individuals are supported by a collective effort. They're supported by an organization, by the processes, by the people, by the other, whatever exists around them, the whole context. And more, we're leading ourselves to understanding that it's really the hypo teams and not the hypo individuals. And we really need to create the conditions for the team, as Trezina mentioned, to flourish, and not just for the individuals. And this is a very important shift that is happening on this land specifically, which was very much individual based in comparison to other places of the world that I have worked. I mean, in the other continents, this is not that much of an emphasis, as much as it is in the United States. And even here, though, there is a shift, and now we emphasize much more the team effort, much more how you make the team work, the collective really agreement and emphasis in comparison to the past. And having that in mind, this makes us really understand how we can lift the obstacles that exist over there for the team to work.
No, I totally agree. Rod, you know what I was thinking? I know that you're the moderator, but you have a vast amount of experience. Do you mind chiming in and sharing some thoughts on?
Yeah.
Well, I could, yes. I guess one thing I was just thinking is that what you've brought in is that there's teams, organizations are made up of people with all differences, from whether it's about their performance level. One thing, and I'm not sure if here on the panel I had moderated a few, well, in April, was about diversity around different generations, and I'm really actually curious myself about when you consider the diversity of the different generations, what sort of innovative practices help all the generations feel inclusive to bring innovation. And I think it can be quite different, just from the conversation that we had a few weeks ago. I'm just wondering about your thoughts about the different generations and coming into innovation. What does that?
I think we can all learn a lot from each other. We were just talking about this yesterday, because I was on a call with my team, and there were just not happy faces. Not that they were sad faces or glum faces, but kind of stone faces. And and didn't mean anything, right? Sometimes people's faces are just cold. And I have a tendency to smile all the time. So I was making a joke with them about smiling all the time and where I got it from and all of that. And then at the end of it, one of the leaders said, well, the younger generation doesn't necessarily feel like we should be told to smile, right? And so we were laughing about it. And I said, no one should tell you to smile, but they should bring and spark joy, right? And so it's about shifting your mindset. So me making the joke about smiling, prompted a conversation and dialogue about the differences in how this generation sees it. And I thought to myself, gosh, I'm kidding. I'm definitely a Gen Xer. We're people pleasers, and we want to make sure for the most part that everyone feels like they're a part of a situation. And as Anna said earlier, the newer generation, or even now the age that we're in, people are more individualistic. And so it's about how I'm feeling that day, not necessarily about how I actually cast out to the rest of the group. And being able to accept that and accepting each other, I think, across the generations, and not thinking, oh, this person's going to be slow in technology because they're from this age group, or this person should know technology because they're from this age group. It's about really understanding and treating people individually, but then also honoring the collective.
Yeah, thanks. Anna?
In this part of the world that I operate, which is the Silicon Valley, there are still a lot of very innovative people that are not, let's say, in the Gen Z generation. They are much older, but still very innovative and very provocative in their way of thinking. At the same time, I can see a huge problem because of smaller organizations not understanding how much of a wealth these people might be bringing to their organization. And those organizations usually do not have systematic processes. So there's a lot of tacit knowledge that these people have, and it's in their mind. When these people really go out of, they retire, go out of work, then they panic. And there is a lot of need of systematizing the knowledge that they have, and they remember of that the very last minute. So I had clients that I was consulting, and they really wanted to change how things were being done, and they were very much multi-generational, very much. And those people that were belonging to the older generation, they knew how things were being done, and that was creating a conflict with the younger generations, because all this knowledge was not very much within the processes or the systems of the organization. So what I suggest is, for a multi-generational environment, you really need to create the conditions for all the generations to flourish, because younger people entering an organization should also have the same kind of abilities to flourish as those that are already in. And in order to do that, you really need to facilitate things. You really need to make their life easier. You really need to take things down. How do we operate? How we can operate better? What is the way that things are being done? Is there clarity on how the roles are being fulfilled? What does really success mean in my job? When you create this kind of clarity level, then all generations can are related, and they can operate much better. The exchange is much more healthy. What I've seen is that this is not the case, and that's why things might get less productive.
So I wonder, Anna, the role of feedback, so leadership and employee feedback, do you see that playing a role in shaping, improving that clarity, improving that innovative culture? Is feedback, how can you use feedback?
feedback, I mean, feedback is absolutely very important because it's really the mirror. You see the mirror and you see, okay, I need to fix that. I need to fix it. I mean, feedback is a mirror. I mean, if you don't have a mirror at home, you don't know how you look like. So that's the thing. You've got your feedback, so you know how you look like, so you can really comb your hair and be much more tidy than you would have been. So yet, I would like to very much emphasize the fact that the manager can do things up to a point, because the manager is the actor. But you cannot have a movie or a play with only actors. You need to have the screenplay, you need to have the director, you need to have some kind of structure in your play. So what I'm saying is that we all see the actors and we really celebrate them and we love them. But we know that there is a lot of work behind that for the movie, for the play to take place. So what I'm saying is that you really need to give the tools to the manager for him or her to do their job. And that tools is really giving them clarity of the structure, giving them really a way to operate, have a very good operating model, well thought out, so that the managers can really do their job, flourish. And even if they provide feedback every day, every moment, but the other things do not exist, it's not going to work.
No, I totally agree with that, Anna. Thank you for that. From a feedback perspective, what I think of all the time is that people do receive feedback. What do you do with the feedback that you receive, right? So it made me think just a few minutes ago when you asked that question, Rod, I thought about once I had to give some feedback to a leader, an executive. First of all, let me say this. Full feedback is what's important, is 360 feedback. So not just the manager giving feedback, but the team also giving feedback to the manager and being able to do that without repudiation, right? Nothing should happen to you as a result of telling your manager, these are the two things I think you do great, but this is the one thing I really wish you do a little bit different, Simon Sinek, right? When I was thinking about a leader that I had to give feedback to as an HR person from their team. And she was a fantastic leader. She was absolutely one of my favorite people. She was always thinking about her team. She was excellent at making sure she positioned them properly upward, but she was having a little bit of problem managing downward, right? People did not know that she was doing all these fantastic things for them. They didn't know. They called her the ice queen. And that was the word it was a customer service center. And that was the little whisper that was going on, right? And when I gave her the feedback, she was so upset, and she actually literally threw something at me at the time, but it was in jest. And but I told her, I said, I'm gonna let that all sink in, and then now we're gonna fix it, right? We're gonna fix this perception of you, because I don't want your team, I want them to know what you're doing, how you advocate for them, why there are all these things happening. And as HR practitioners, we have the ability to influence others in the organization to understand how successful a leader is, or why, or help a person correct the behaviors that they're doing. And she actually was promoted out of the job eventually because of the recognition that her team gave her and the work that she and I did together to make sure that the team understood the impacts that she was making, the type of person that she was. And I just wish more often we were able to exercise our power that way, so that people could see that if you actually partner with HR for these types of things to influence, or you feel like I'm having trouble with XYZ, feeling vulnerable to HR helps you to actually execute your strategies, manage your teams, be effective. We are your partners. We're not just subject matter experts in HR, but we're actually your partners in facilitating excellence in the organization.
I really love that. And I'll just bring an example in for myself, and it's around feedback, is that my background, and I'm in the Air Force, in the military, and a key part of everyday practice is that you plan what you're going to do, you go and execute your mission, and then you're going to debrief the mission. So feedback is very much built into the everyday way of operating. When you have those debrief sessions, it's very much about a rankless debrief, so that, again, like that 360-degree that you're talking about there is just so critical, so that you actually get to the truth of the matter, and so you can improve. So it's about everyday practice, that if we can improve just that little bit every day, we're going to be so much better at the end of the year. And so that's really, innovation doesn't always need to be about some great strategic initiative. It just can be about improving day to day with everyday practice is an element from my experience.
It's the how do you eat an elephant, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead, Anna. I saw your hand.
Well, what I usually say is that, feedback is like brushing your teeth. You do it every day. And in that way, you prevent having any kind of dramatic procedures in order to have your teeth clean. Because when you really provide feedback every day, all the time, then it's a very simple process. There's no emotional load into that, which is very important. It's just a flow of every day, nothing special. So nothing dramatic then is needed afterwards in order to fix things back.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that. And not being afraid to give feedback. I do find often that there's managers who are afraid to give honest feedback, that they kind of sugarcoat, and then they're ready to terminate the person. They're talking to HR this way. They're saying, I just don't know about Ted. I just don't know about Ted. He's, and then, but they're talking to the employee, and they're not giving them the actual, facts of the case. This is what you're not performing. These aren't your strengths, or this is where you're really doing a fantastic job. But, maybe you need to understand this technology better, or you need to actually handle your time management better. And it's unfortunate, but I feel like if we can actually, again, empowerment, if you are having difficulty giving feedback to your own team, ask for assistance in how you can do that. And like you're saying, Anna, if it's just a dialogue and conversation on a daily basis, it doesn't feel so overwhelming to tell somebody that they're not doing a good job. And it's also good to build a relationship, because feedback is about relationship. If I feel like you're giving me this feedback from a mountain and I don't know you personally, I'm not going to feel like I can trust the feedback that you're giving me. But if I feel connected to you, I'm going to feel honored that you gave me the feedback, because I can trust you and you trust me to actually execute the job.
And then extending on this, I guess feedback can be subjective, or seem to be subjective. In this day and age, with so much digital innovation, that we have a lot of data. So how do you see data-driven sort of conversations improving, whether it's feedback or HR, innovation? So where does data come in today's sort of conversations that we have at work? You got any examples of that?
Sure. I think that it's really important for you to have data that's available to folks. You should be setting key measures. You should have KPIs. You should have information readily available. There's so many tools. We were talking the other day about not being spreadsheet heavy in HR. That would be awesome. But if all you have is spreadsheets, make sure you're sharing the data with your team. People, I had posted the other day on my LinkedIn, men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie, right? So people can make up whatever they want, but the numbers are going to tell the facts. And if you stick with the numbers, it does help with giving feedback. It helps you to stay on your task on a daily basis. It helps you to understand whether or not the strategy is actually working. So data is key to actually delivering a successful strategy. Anna?
Well, that's why, as I was talking before, it's so important to have clarity on what success looks like in the role. This creates also the trust that Tresina was talking about. If you have openness, transparency, clarity from the beginning on what is required, this starts the first day of the year. It is repeated the second day, and every one of the 365 days of the year. There are many systems to do that. It might be the SMART objectives, the OKR, the KPIs. There are so many things that you can really build that. But first, you need to build that. Second, you need to follow through that. with the feedback process. And this is how all these things become parts of the whole. They become the bricks of the whole wall called performance. But only if you have clarity for anything. I mean, if you really want to lose weight, for example, you really need to create the objective and then split it into everyday actions. What's going to happen in order for that to be achieved? The same thing is for every work, for every role that needs to have the goal and needs to have the tasks, needs to have the way that everything will be measured if successful or not successful. This kind of clarity creates a very good trusted two-way process between the manager and the employee. Because if the manager comes up with feedback on something that has not been agreed before, that is a problem. That really creates a trust problem between these two. So I'm saying that you really need to devote the time upfront in the beginning and create clarity. This is the things that are required. This is how we're going to do these things. They're going to be achieved every month, every week, every day, and I'm going to give you feedback on these things. So
things
put
with
the
real
time.
date.
Yes, exactly. That's how you create really feedback on real data. That's the only way to do it.
No, I love that. And I mean, it's about taking that time up front to build that plan and to say, you know, these are going to be, these are our timelines. These are the things that we actually need to meet. Like you said, defining what success looks like and coming to agreement. Because I think that's a piece that's missed often is that there isn't that sync of agreement between the manager and the staff. The staff is sometimes thinking in the back of their mind, there's no way we can get that done, but they don't feel comfortable saying that. And the manager doesn't feel comfortable accepting that. We were working recently with a partner and talking to them about delivering this huge project. And they didn't think it was a huge project. They thought it should, we should be able to do it in 2 weeks. And when we started to, of course, it's always the 8-week, you say it's supposed to be a 12-week project, they compress it to 8, right? And then it becomes 4.
Must be T&M.
And you always want them to understand what the impacts will be if you don't actually follow through. And I think that's the piece that often is missed, is that people don't say, they don't tell the truth about, well, you will get this done. We'll get this done, but is it going to be actually what you want in the end? Mm-hmm. And that's the piece that I think is really key, outside of what Anna said, because what she said is exactly right.
Yeah. All right. So moving on.
I would like to add on that, Tresina and Rod, that I believe that since 2020, one thing has a little bit changed, and that is how much people are emphasizing emotions and mental health. So people might, especially younger generations, but I don't want to make that a generational thing. People really pay more attention to how they feel. Also, they really understood the vulnerability that all of us have, and they might not be tolerant to behaviors that can unbalance their emotions and their mental health. So in this work environment that we operate now, 4 years after 2020, the manager and the employee need to have a relationship that does not go against this balance. That's why not only clarity is important, not only feedback is important, but also it is important to understand how these two things are very much preserving the holiness of the person. Because the person, whatever we were saying in the past, that, you can leave yourself outside the door and all these silly things that we were saying in the past. The person comes to work with his or her whole self, with the problems that has at home, with the things that need to take care, with all the things. So we really need to be very, very respectful of the person as a person, and then as an employee.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And that's, as you may know, is the theme of the hacking conversations in the month of May. So yes, we'll be discussing that in quite depth. All right, so just wondering, just a sort of a little bit different, what are some of the common misconceptions about innovation in HR so that you've encountered, and how have you addressed those misconceptions?
That's a great question. I mean, I think one of the misconceptions, and I both inwardly as far as HR professionals thinking this, and I feel like organizations as a whole do not always see HR as innovators. And it's unfortunate. I mean, how many decades have we been doing this, and folks don't always see what the value is of HR, and that we are not a cost center. If we can help people to understand that, we add value. If you do not have the people that work at the organization, guess what, people? You don't have an organization. So it's that thought process. And I don't know that, I think that impacts how we're seen from an innovation standpoint. We are definitely lagging behind, and often thought as an afterthought in how does this play into other parts of the business, right? And one of the biggest costs of most organizations is the people, right? And if you're not managing those budgets and how that's done, and performance and all those pieces in a way that actually is innovative, you're going to create a lag for the organization, and there are other organizations that will outpace you. That's all this disruption that's happening in the marketplace, right? We've got all of these newer companies that are disrupting staple organizations, and it's because they don't have all of the restrictions. They don't have the 10,000 approval processes. They don't have 17 layers to get one thing done. And that is the only way that we're going to make innovation key in HR, is to help to start looking at, pulling back the covers and seeing what we're really, what are the bed bugs that are underneath those covers that we really need to address.
I like what you're saying, and it's true that in the vast majority of organizations, HR is very much the one that helps into law regulation, doing really things that might be considered as administrative, and involved that much into the other parts of how to ensure the right capabilities. And with that being said, that means that which are many. I mean, apart from the large organizations, all the
Am I losing Anna, or is it me?
I think we did lose her for just a second. Yeah.
Okay. So while I wait for Anna, I'm just wondering about, so we've been talking very much about HR initiatives or HR, but really HR, most things that happen are really cross departmental, sort of across the organization. Like where have you had success about, collaborating across the organization? We got Anna back.
I think we have Anna back, and then we can jump on that. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I mean, I got lost. I'm so sorry. So I was just saying that it's important, even for these kind of HR organizations that are serving the law and trying really to preserve their organization from any kind of mishaps regarding that. Even these ones that they can quantify. I see Deborah's comment in the comments saying, I mean, how can I really quantify my work so that it's so that I can prove the value that I bring? And I would like to suggest that in every case, try to agree at the beginning what are the things that they need you to achieve. Try to quantify in a smart way the objectives, and at the same time make the statement, if this does not happen, what's going to be the problem, and what's going to be the problem in money for the organization, what's going to be the repercussions in that and that area. So what you do means this kind of benefit for the organization. Do that from the beginning. It's like the brushing of the teeth that we said. Do that as a preventive action. Do that when you start the year. Agree that with the CEO or your manager and say, I'm doing these things, and these things that I'm going to be doing, which are going to be measured in that and that and that way, are going to save us that money, that money, that money, that money. So the work that you're doing is then quantified.
Very good, Anna. We listened to your day, Anna. So just before you come back, I was just saying that we've been talking about innovation and HR, and that a lot of innovation that happens in organisation is actually cross-departmental, and like it's not just HR only. So just wondering some successful stories, if you've got some successful stories where you've really collaborated across department to foster innovation in your organizations.
So fostering collaboration, I think, is about listening a lot of times, and just understanding what the other parts of the organization need, and being well armed and equipped as an HR professional, being well armed and equipped with what the actual business is doing. I mean, it's the whole concept of HR business partners, right? Is that we're actually supposed to understand what's happening in the business, be well educated, be well versed. We should actually be able to bring innovation not only to HR, but to the organization. We should know what's going on in the marketplace, who our competitors are, what they're doing, when there's an opportunity for us to strike. We really should be, when we're sitting in those rooms and having conversations, we should be just as well informed as anybody else who's in the organization. We should actually be partners of operations, so that we understand how the business is actually running internally, where our pain points are, how we're structured, if there's opportunities for organizational redesign. How do we save the organization money? As Anna was saying earlier, how do we actually look at the budgets, the EBITDA, and understand how we impact that? HR has a huge opportunity to be the one who bridges the gaps and helps others who are not necessarily playing nice in the sand or not seeing things the same way come together, and to understand how we build as one organization. I feel like a lot of organizations today, when we're talking about individualism, get siloed, and there's this, us against them internally. And it's like, hey guys, we're all on the same side. It's kind of like what we're doing right now in the United States, right? We're all fighting each other, and it's like, you're either one or you're not, right? And so it's bridging that gap, and HR has the power and also the positioning. It's not all on us, but we are the ones who can help facilitate those collaborations.
And you can also very much instill this kind of cross departmental collaboration by creating, as an organization, you really need to create cross-functional teams in order to solve out the problems or go on a project. So even if the organization does not have the initiative to do that, managers have the ability to do that. When you're trying to solve something, reaching out to other functions and taking their help, this is going to be a reciprocative action afterwards, because they will do it also in the future. So it's something that perhaps, all of us have learned when we were studying in college, in university. If you do things alone, you're not going to go far. But if you really try to solve things by examining something from different aspects, so from different functions view, then you can solve something. So try to, when you have projects, as a manager of one department, try to involve the other departments and create cross-functional teams. In that way, you not only solve the problem, you not only have a better project management, you not only create better communication within the organization, but you also create better relationships that you're gonna afterwards enjoy back with the other departments. So this kind of openness creates a benefit for you as a manager, I mean, directly, but also for your department. And I would like to say something that it's very much important for every HR person, so that they know how they can make things happen. As Jenny, my friend, a long-year friend here was saying the other day in our HR association meeting, you really need to know as an HR person how your business makes money. If you know how your business makes money, then you know how you can help your organization. If you don't know that, that is a problem.
That is spot on, Anna. And I saw a comment that said, you know, as long as leadership supports this, we can support the business. And the one way to get the backing of leadership is to understand the business. If you are talking to a leader and you can tell them, you can regurgitate to them the things that were said in the executive team meetings or on the town hall, or that you have done your research, or you understand what's happening in the marketplace, you start to build their confidence in you as a business partner and as a business professional. And then there's that trust, right? If they're working on something that is innovative and it's new and it's going to change the marketplace, and you're able to speak to that and to say how people impact that and how the resources will impact that and what that means, especially, and in your space in AI, right? If you have AI that's coming and it's going to impact the business overall, what does that mean for your growth strategy? What does that mean for reduction in force? What does that mean for reskilling and upskilling resources? And so it really helps to know your business and understand it, like you're saying, and it helps for you to paint the picture for leadership that you are a part of that, of the help of the organization, and not somebody who's actually impeding the organization from progressing. And sometimes as HR professionals, we get become real sticklers about process, and it has to be done this way. And if we can be a little more flexible, it does help us also in that space.
So knowing the business and knowing that business-like metrics, I'm just wondering what are some of the ways to really measure success and to showcase success of our innovative HR initiatives, innovations? What are some metrics that you've looked at or used in the past?
Some of the metrics that we use are net promoter scores, things like that help to determine how, keep the pulse of the organization, asking for surveys and feedback data on very specific projects that are happening from HR, asking people what they want and need. I mean, I think sometimes we follow the trends of what's happening in the HR world and not necessarily the needs of our organization. And we have to be careful with that and balance that. That's my thoughts on that. Anna?
A lot of times, I mean, when it has to do with the change and the level of the change. So one important metric is the adoption. So how quickly something was adopted, the time dimension, but also the percentage. I mean, how many people have adopted something new. That creates a kind of metric to see how innovative is the organization. The other thing is the kind of methods that are being utilized by the organization. So do they have, let's say, sprints? Do they have Scrum Masters? Agility methods that usually offer the opportunity to the organization to review things and change how they operate. All these things can really help us measure the level of innovation that exists over there. At the same time, one thing that is very important in order to understand the level of innovation within the organization is to see the operating model. So trying to understand what are the inputs, what the organization is putting in order to operate, and how this becomes in the output. When you make this kind of study, you understand how innovative the organization is and what happens in between. What I'm trying to say is that it's very much important to see how the organization operates as a whole. A lot of times in my consulting, I see organizations that they really want to do things, they really want to achieve things, but they see the small picture. If you don't see the whole picture, you can't do things. I mean, I guess that's the reason that many people in many different functions should be involved into doing things. That's why they need also consulting. That's why, I mean, organizations really need to review how they operate in order to make things happen.
All right, well, that brings our panel to conclusion today. It's been a very, very fast 1 hour, actually. I probably had many more questions I hadn't thought of, but I'd really like to thank our two panelists for your insightful contributions today. Yeah, so let's just continue to push the boundaries of traditional HR and embrace change and drive forward. And I look forward to seeing and talking to many of you in the future on more panels. So thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rod and Anna.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Teresina. Thank you, Rod. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.